Hello, hello, hello. Testing audio, testing audio. Mike, go ahead and say something.
What's up, everybody? If you can hear me.
Respond if you can hear us. There is a delay. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and get started though. I'm sure it's working fine. What? How dare you yawn? What the? How dare you double yawn? Alright. Alright. Let's go ahead and switch over to my screen. Say something again, Mike. Just to
I'm
make sure.
saying lots of things, dude.
Alright.
All the things, dude.
Yep, they can hear us. Sweet. Hey, Nuclear Warriors up in here. What's up, my
Oh,
man?
snap.
What's up, my man?
I see him stream on Twitch in the middle of the night.
Gross.
And I'm like,
stalker.
yeah, the weirdo. Me.
He's actually not streaming. I'm just outside of his house.
It's live for me.
Yeah, it's live for me. I just look through the window and I can see him.
Yo, how do you do these values, bro?
Yeah, he's not actually painting either. He's just making breakfast.
I'm just taking notes on his lifestyle.
Yeah. In fact, the only
One
time
day
I
I'll
watch
figure
out
out what brush he's using. One day.
Like the only time I actually watch him is when he's not painting. I don't actually watch him paint ever. Every other moment in his life, I'm watching him though. All right. All right. Let's get into this. So, last stream we had a lot of great questions that we didn't really get to, and I apologize for that. So this time around, I'm gonna try to see if I can get to all of them, if not most of them. I mean, it's just gonna.
I'm ready for questions.
It's just gonna happen. It's just a product of how this thing works, you know.
Yeah, we do our best.
Especially as more and more people start to begin to watch and engage with our content, it's just going to keep doing that. Please use keyframe frequency for a 4-second delay. Currently, keyframes are not set often enough, which can cause buffering issues. The current keyframe frequency. What? What does that mean?
Painting looks smooth. I don't think you have to worry about that.
Yeah, but what does that mean though? What are they trying to get at? All right, weird.
No idea.
Okay. But I forget. Like there was a topic that wanted to be answered last time.
Oh yeah.
I forget what it was. But also there was.
We were supposed to do an artwork based on the feedback.
Yeah,
Did
there
you
was
ever
a
make
bunch.
that poll?
Yeah, I never made that poll. I just was working.
Oh damn. Sorry,
guys.
guys.
What I'll do is just kind of like remember what was said. And somebody wanted Wolverine. I remember that. What else was there?
Oh, it was a disagreement with the folks over at Draftsman. That's what you wanted to elaborate on. Yeah,
that's perfect. That's a great.
Look at my giant brain.
You have a tiny, regular size brain. It's just a regular size.
No, your brain is very smooth and it's small.
It's very
I have a giant brain. Lots of edges. Protrusions.
My brain is super not smooth. I got a really non-smooth brain.
Dude, you should see my brain, bro. It's like lumpy. And it's enormous. You know, my nose is bleeding right now.
So I'm gonna draw like some sort of like monstrous version of Wolverine, just kind of in my style. I think that should be fun.
Cool, I'm sure he'll love that.
Yeah, while I'll talk about the things. So the disagreement was like, is there a wrong way to practice? I think that was kind of the premise. If I'm getting it wrong, I apologize. My good buddies over at the Proco Studios, I love those guys. So let's start with like a disclaimer. I don't necessarily disagree entirely with what they're getting at in that video, and just to kind of try to paraphrase, they had comments about like that there is such a thing as practicing bad, and I think on the face of it, that's true, right? For instance, like let's say you are an artist, and all you practice for the rest of your days is how to draw turds, like literally just dookies, okay? And that's all you draw every day for the remainder of your lifetime. yeah, you're not going to be able to then all of a sudden paint like a cool character, of course. Just unlikely, you know? But the problem that I have is that if you are actively trying to get better, right? Like I think it's less about how you're doing, it's about your mentality, the philosophy behind it, right? Because I think if you aren't actually trying, like for instance, if you are just doing the bare bones of what it takes to draw, and I guess this gets to their point of like practicing badly, right? But like the point I'm trying to attack is more of a philosophy of thinking rather than the actual way that they go about it, a person goes about it. And I'll explain why this is important. Because if you have the philosophy of like, I want to get better, I think inevitably you will find ways to get better, right? If you actually genuinely believe in this, you know? So how would you know that you are doing this? Well, as you practice, you feel real frustration with how you're progressing, and then you seek more information, including, let's say, watching the Draftsman podcast and my videos and many other great artists out there, videos, right? But that brings me to the point that I'm not a fan of discouraging people based off of what they may actually be doing now, right? So if you tell people that they are practicing bad, you know, there's a lot of existential crisis that can happen from that, right? Where they'll start to feed into this delusion of like, oh, then everything I was doing prior was a waste, right? Or, oh, like all these years, like I've been doing it wrong, or all this time, like I've just distracted myself in the wrong direction, you know, because these same people actually might be very hard workers, very focused individuals, and you're explaining to them, oh, you're not doing it right, you're not practicing right, that's why you're not improving. There's a real problem that can happen from that, you know, psychologically speaking. So I would encourage, instead of saying something along the lines of you're practicing wrong, I like to say that there's better ways to practice. It's more of a framing of the language that I'm a big fan, right? There's a more effective way to get better. Like these are the things, like you've taken my classes, you hear me say this stuff all the time, right? Because I will also say, like, if you just did it wrong, like you just practiced by copying, which I'm a big advocate against. I always tell people you shouldn't just copy, right? And we can get into that in just a second. But if you just copy all the time, right, you still actually will get better, you know? It's still hard to avoid getting better if you are actively copying all the time, which I believe is not the best way to get better in a fast way. Like if there's a faster way to do it. And this goes to my point. Like it's not necessarily that you're doing it entirely wrong. You are actually still investing tons of great time, great effort. You have a good sense of purpose. There's just better ways of doing it. You know what I mean? And one of the best ways to do it is to actually pay attention to what you're learning. Test yourself often. Time yourself. Like redraw what you thought you've learned. There's many things, you know? And these are definitely more effective. But as long as you're still doing it, like, because I know people who are like this, who have just kind of done the thing that I say you shouldn't do as much. And they're some of the greatest artists in our industry, right? They're the people who are leading the way in a lot of different industries, you know? So it seems a little bit of like a problematic situation if you're telling people indirectly that they may have been wasting their lives. You know what I mean? Or they've been wasting their time. You know, I always get asked this question, if I can go back in time and tell my past self something about what they can do differently, like what I can do differently to be a better artist, right? I usually answer that question with, I don't really have anything that I would tell my past self. There's almost nothing that I would want to tell that person. And the rationale behind this is because all the things that I've done wrong, all the mistakes, including practicing potentially quote unquote wrong, practicing it the wrong way, actually taught me a lot. It taught me not only what I was learning what to do, I was also learning what not to do. And that's also pretty valuable, Because when you start to learn what not to do, it actually supplements the things that you're learning to do, right? It starts to add balance to and weight to the things that you actually do purposefully. And when people start to separate that their failed efforts, their bad attempts, their misguided use of their time, when people start to look at that as a positive influence in your life rather than a negative one, they become more proactive. Because if you start looking at it as a negative one, it can get really, paralyzing and do the opposite of what it's supposed to do. As I'm encouraging it, it's actually holding you down, right? And that's why I disagree with kind of the premise of there's bad practice, but I'm not totally saying that there isn't such a thing as bad practice. I think it's important to kind of psychologically reframe it, because it will help people pursue more vigorously, right? Like if I tell somebody it's okay to have an excuse, it's just not okay to have the same excuses continuously and constantly, because at some point that means you don't care. But see how I said it's okay to have an excuse, because I'm putting myself in that person's shoes. I've been there. I've done that. And I'm saying to them, it's okay, man. You made a mistake. But let's learn from it. Let's take a step back. Let's take a look at it. Let's look at the bigger picture. Versus, oh yeah, you're just full of excuses. You're lazy. You're a procrastinator. A lot of times I find educators put too much stress on the students to kind of get their act together, versus a teacher really trying to find a way to help them understand how to get their act together and why it's important. Not for myself, but for that individual. You know what I mean? And this is generally why my mentorships do really well. That's why I have a high retention usually in my classes, meaning that a lot of my students submit work, stay in class, excited about class. They're not afraid. You know what I mean? Because if they don't do well, I explain to them why, and that it's okay. Let's try again. Let's try. Well, okay, what did we do last time that didn't work out? Instead of saying like, oh yeah, you're a garbage person with garbage skills. I try to prepare them for the worst, for sure. But I find that this hard, like brass tacks type of approach only really works in like the really hardcore people and people that are a little bit more capable of taking that type of thing. And not everybody's like that, and not everybody should necessarily be like that. You know what I mean? You don't want to live it. You don't want to work in an industry too. You don't want to work with people that are just constantly giving you crap. You want to work in a place where you feel comfortable and being criticized, given feedback that makes sense and is justifiable with your actions. Not where everybody's constantly grilling you and treating you like you're not capable of keeping up. But anyway, hopefully that kind of clears things up. So and I want to make sure that everyone understands. I'm not necessarily taking away from this disagreement as like I think that Proco and the Draftsmen are they don't have good insight, because I mentioned last stream, Marshall, Vandruff, and Stan are some of my greatest inspirations, and these are really good artists and very great instructors. They teach a lot of people how to do a lot of good things. I think it's just important that some people might hear these things, and I've taught too many people, and I know too many people, that when they hear something like that, it's the opposite effect. It doesn't motivate them. It actually discourages them, And I want to speak to those people specifically, that I'm telling you, like, it's okay. As long as you're putting pencil to paper, or a Wacom pen to Wacom tablet, or whatever device you're using, iPad, Apple Pencil to iPad, right? As long as you're putting that time in, even if it's only a few hours a day, a few minutes a day, that's really the valuable use of your time that you need. Don't worry about whether what you're doing is good. Worry about the effort. Are you putting that effort in? And so I think that's a good message to kind of just leave with the peoples.
Yeah.
The peoples.
See, that's your tiny brain at work.
Oh man, you're right. I have a tiny, smooth brain. My brain is super smooth.
What you didn't know is I paid off the doctors that took out your to smooth out
during my
brain.
surgery. Oh, clever.
Yeah, they smoothed out your brain. I had to catch up somehow. I got to do what I got to do. Make those gains.
Yeah.
It seems to not be working though.
Yeah, it is not working.
No, it's not working. The other thing I want to add to your commentary is that when it comes to your class, something I think students really enjoy, and I see this in the it seems like people like hearing this when they email in about your class, is that you do like you give everyone the same first assignment, and then you gauge their skill and give individual homework from there on out. So that way it caters to like any skill level, and I think that's very useful for catering to the individual. Whereas some other classes might say, okay, we're doing this week, this that other
Yeah,
week,
curriculum
and then
style.
if you're not able to catch up, that's on you. And instead of like trying to help that individual with what they need at that moment.
Absolutely. This is why I have a hard time teaching at other establishments, and I've taught at some really great places and some places that aren't so great. Is because I don't necessarily like sticking to a curriculum because I see individuals at different pace. It's kind of like a broken educational system where we are focused on following a strict plan and guideline. Now, I don't
Results.
think that that's wrong. I actually think that there's a place for that, especially when you're trying to simulate a job. And if that's the case, I think you should actually go harder, right? You should, if the student does not achieve optimal quality of what you've asked them to do, they should default fail the class, right? Like they should go ahead and just fail and try the class again. But the circumstances in that regard should be very clear, right? Like it should not be confused. But when you're just trying to teach somebody how to get good, it's the opposite. It should be very forgiving, very like let's like walk through it, let's figure it out together, you know? Because one of these situations simulates a nurturing environment where we're helping each other and we're helping guide somebody who's confused. They're allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to ask questions and fail hard, you know. And then the other circumstance is very important too because that demonstrates the actual work environment, you know. But when you try to kind of meet somewhere in the middle, I feel like that's problematic, right? Where you're trying to help that person, but then you're also like trying to scold them to no end, you know? It's like it's really hard. Like I think there's a way to do it, probably both of them for sure. But like I feel like a all or nothing approach for either situation works best. And for instance, my classes specifically are more towards helping the individual. It's a very nurturing environment, right? But I always remind my students that if they do poorly and I ask them to do something, I always remind them like you got to remember that I was expecting this and this is what you provided. You have to respect that in a work environment this would not be acceptable. And I tell them this, you know, so that they can essentially understand the problems that they may run into in the future. But again, I don't necessarily punish them for that. I then proceed to walk through what could have been improved in general, you know? And so, with that being said, like I said, like I think it's okay to have a little bit of tough love. It just depends on the circumstances. Yeah, but like to your point though, of like you know students really like the pacing of their own individual abilities. Yeah, the reason why I do that too is because you know I've you know, like the educational system in general has this problem of like yeah like leaving people behind. Like if you have not paying attention or you misunderstood an assignment or whatever the case may be, like something happens and falling behind could detrimentally affect the rest of your lessons and your ability to grow thereafter, you know? And I think that's really important to understand. Where if you make a mistake in my class or other great instructors' mentorships, we'll pause that right there. We'll look at what went wrong and focus on that. And I won't necessarily give you more than you can handle. While maybe the other students did not make these mistakes and they can push forward. Or maybe other students made even worse mistakes, so they have to push back a little bit more, you know? But it's circumstantial. But yeah, going back to this kind of larger point about like there is no such thing as bad practice, or there is such a thing as bad practice. Again, I think on the face of it, this is true. But I think tonally, we might need to reconsider how we explain this as educators, because it can really fall into the trap of discouraging people indirectly. You know what I mean? Because I feel like if Stan and Marshall were confronted with a student who basically explained their anxieties of what has happened, I don't think they would be like, just suck it up. I think they would be very sympathetic and talk to them and talk it through it, you know? And that's why I'm pretty convinced that this criticism I may have is not that intense. You know, I am almost certain they believe this too. You know, especially if I was in the room with them when we were talking about it, I think we would come to a consensus, right?
Yeah.
I think they're just speaking to literal reality of bad practice, which again I think is true. It was like I was talking to my friend about this recently because we're talking about like terminology and language, right? And I was saying, you know, if someone were to call me the N-word, right? And they were like my closest friend, I would not get offended, not even a little bit, right?
We talking hard R?
Yeah, even with the hard R, it really wouldn't matter, right? But if it's a complete stranger that comes up to me and calls me, let's say, an idiot, right, which is not controversial of a word, right? I would get more affected by that than a close friend saying hard R N-word. You know what I mean? And I think it's important that like whenever people talk, like when you the ways you explain things and the words you use depends in the context and how you're saying it and what you say, you know, affects people when they hear it, right? Some people when they hear those words, even without those contexts, right? Like it just doesn't matter the context; they'll be affected by it. That's why I don't even say it, right? Because I know most people aren't necessarily cool with it, even my close friends, right? So I generally try to stay away from it because it's just a safer route. But I am also not delusional that like, you know, context matters, man. You know, and I think a lot of times, because even with like this practicing and art stuff, right? It's really very important because a lot of artists are very insecure. You know, a lot of young artists, people who are just starting out, are incredibly insecure, right? They constantly are judging their artwork against all the great artists in and on ArtStation, you know, on Pinterest, on whatever they're finding their inspiration from, you know. They're constantly gauging themselves against this. It's kind of like the Instagram model with the female audiences, you know, when females look at all these beautiful women that, like when they look at Kim Kardashian, it's like, you know, they look at that and they're like, oh man, I don't look like that. And I think that's what men are into. And, you know, then they try to simulate that or copy that when in reality, most men generally do not care. I mean, they just don't. We think, most men, at least in my circles, think, you know, women are pretty beautiful, generally speaking, you know, and men aren't nearly as picky as you might think. It's really more self-criticizing, it seems like. And I think the same is true on the flip side. Like I think men are also equally looking at some like the people like The Rock or these overly like muscular and very tonally structured Greek gods of men, right? It's the same problem, right? Same kind of misguided kind of intuitions of what you think you should be. And so when people look at other artists, it's the same problem, right? So you see like all these great illustrators, these great concept artists. You see people like me say, oh, hashtag 20 minutes. You know, oh man, I can barely even like get a sketch started in 20 minutes. It's an unjustifiable comparison. And usually what I like to do is tell people, especially with painting, it's a little bit easier to kind of give advice on this. It's like if you go to the gym and I ask you to like you know, deadlift 300 pounds, you're very unlikely going to do it. But if I asked you like, how do you think I got to 300 pounds? You wouldn't think that it was some sort of mystery. You'd be, oh, you probably trained pretty heavily and pretty often. And so then when it comes to art, when you see an artist paint so miraculously and so effortlessly, for whatever reason, this all of a sudden becomes a magic trick. When the reality, it is also just like the whole lifting weights, heavy weights. It's the same thing. That person just also have been lifting weights, artistic weights, for several years. You know. And so once you start to say, okay, all these artists that I admire, all these people that I look up to, I am, incredibly insecure by these things, but like I can get there too. They're just humans just like me. They're capable of doing, like, making mistakes. They took forever to get to where they're at now too. It's just a matter of time for me, It's just a healthier mentality. And like I said, I get real cautious about like explaining how people are doing something right or something wrong in that regard. I think it's better to just I don't think it's wrong. I think there is, like, on the face of it, I think it's true. It's just how you word it to make it sound even more true and approachable for people, right? And so, yeah, that's all I got to say about that. We could try to start taking questions now. Did you have any other comments?
All right. Not really. I mean, I was gonna chime in with the N-word comment.
Oh yeah,
and
go for it.
Say don't play Call of Duty then, because I was playing last night with my best friend. We were drinking some White Claws and playing Call of Duty. And this like, I assume he's a teenager, but he just kept on screaming the N-word repeatedly, and then using the F word for our gay folks. And it was just like, that happens more often than I like, but
Yeah,
it was just so jarring.
especially
It's
like
bro,
children. Yeah, kids are gonna be
it's like
crazy. Yeah.
I was we it was kind of to a point where we weren't mad at the guy. We were just kind of like, "Are you okay?" Like,
No, he's
and then
definitely raging. Yeah.
yeah, and then yeah, I don't want to elaborate on it because I don't want to end up using colorful language. But yeah, we were just like, we were having a good time just playing, and then all of a sudden this guy's on our team screaming that, and we're just like, man,
It's the
there's cancel culture for the wrong people. Like,
no.
this guy
Listen,
should lose a job if he has a job.
no. This is the thing, right? Like, this is a kid. Like, a lot of the people that are
Well, we
affected
don't.
by that.
Not confirmed. He's a kid. It
I'm
seems
almost
like he'd
certain.
be a kid.
I'm
Yeah, if
almost
I had to
certain.
guess, he was probably 17,
Yeah.
probably 16, 17.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, the whole the issue that we find with cancel culture is that sometimes people make these mistakes at a young age, and then
Yeah, fair enough.
like, it's recorded, it's documented somehow, and then people find out, and then they exploit it, right? And they're like, this person is this way now, and it's just like, I don't know. But if it's a full grown adult, they've had plenty of time to understand the problems with this. Then yeah, I'm
I've
like,
had
yeah, I don't really have that much
full-grown adults
remorse
say
for.
that.
Yeah, very very little empathy for this person. I still have empathy because there is some sort of issue that might have caused this person to never figure out why this is a problem, you know. But we can't let people go around doing stupid stuff either, right?
Right.
So,
So
like, I could sympathize. Like, I've talked about this before. Like, I could sympathize at some level. Like, even the most despicable people, right? Like, you look at like people like mass shooters. Like, I could understand how this person might have finally snapped. It could have been a large level of neglect. Could have been some, you know, health issues. It could have been access. There's lots of things that can contribute to that. But at the same time, I'm like, people shouldn't be going around shooting people, and this person should be accountable for it, even though I can see how this could potentially have happened. They need to pay the price for what they've done, because people have died, people have been punished unjustly, you know. And so, like the problem that I usually have with these debates and arguments is that it seems like nobody wants to have an honest discussion about what the solutions could actually be, right? Because you have people who are, let's say, they're fighting for more gun reform, but then there is evidence in other countries where they have plenty of guns floating around, but they have better gun laws. So there's something to look at there. And then there's also the argument of like, well, it's a mental health issue. but these same people don't want socialized medicine. So it's kind of like,
I was just talking to Marcus, my best friend, about that.
yeah,
I was like, the people say, it's a mental health issue, and that's the scapegoat they go to, but then they vote down bills that would increase mental health funding,
yeah.
or those institutions. They
Like
actually have
I think that that's true.
reduced it.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, right? But
It's just
there's no,
hypocritical.
yeah, there's nobody like really fighting for that. So it's like, okay, well, you can't say that and then also not do something about it. It's
Yeah, it's like thoughts and prayers.
yeah,
Like,
and
I mean,
so
just say the right thing and then move on with my day.
so I think it's okay to have sympathy for those. Like even like there's some people within my own industry, within this industry, that I've had choice opinions about based off of their their actions towards me and towards other people. But I don't out these people. I don't like go out of my way to like flag them as problematic, because ultimately it's kind of okay, or I mean it's not okay, but it's not illegal to be a jerk. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and and they're being jerks to certain groups of people that and they're not like really like terrible. Like I'm not, when I say jerk, I mean like an actual just a jerk. Like they're not a
Hmm.
person I would like to hang out with. You know, I generally just kind of ignore them. You know,
Yeah.
and just keep to myself. There are
Well,
there have been some cases where I've seen people that are really really bad and incredibly toxic and are actually detrimental to our community. But I reach out to them personally because I don't think it's necessarily a solution that should be solved by multiple mob mentalities, And in fact, there's actually a great example that's connected to this mass shooting part of the thing we're talking about. Like there was an artist in our community who was saying crazy stuff like this, and then another a very popular artist shared this person's um, their 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 Facebook when they were writing all this crazy stuff, right? And I reached out to this popular artist and I said, you probably shouldn't do that. And I explained this because you're only going to increase this person's chances of actually executing this, because you're essentially putting them in the limelight that either could push them over the edge because now they're being bombarded by all this, justifiable criticism, right? But that kind of person's already unhinged, you know. You might push them over the edge, and on top of that, maybe they're like getting all this attention, even if it's negative. It's the first time they've ever gotten it, and they might feed into that. Either way, it doesn't end well. You know what I mean? I was like, you got to report this. I ended up calling police stations nearby, reporting this.
oh, now I
I didn't
remember this
even
instance.
live. I don't even live in the area where that person was, but I reached and sure enough, the police station was like, yeah, we know who this person is. This
That
isn't
was
the
like 3
first
years ago,
time.
right?
We're on top of it. Like, thanks for your concern. And I was like, geez, that's crazy, And I,
Mm.
I even went another step and was like, look, I called like the gun stores and I was like, look, guys, like I'm just gonna put this person's name there. You guys have your rights to do whatever you want in terms of selling arms, but just keep this person on your mind if this person ever comes in, And they were like, yeah, man, of course. Thanks for the heads up, you know. Like I didn't have to go on like social media and blast this person. I didn't have to um, ostracize this person. I tried to
Took like
make,
private preventative actions.
yeah, like, and I didn't go as far as let's say reach out to this family or whatever, because that's a little too personal,
Hmm.
and I don't necessarily have all the facts. I just know
And
what
you
this
don't want to
person
get personally
said
involved.
and what
You
this
just want to
person, yeah, the evidence
do
that
what
I
you
had,
can.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's a much more reasonable approach.
Err on the side of caution.
Yeah, and this wasn't just my suggestion. This is actually a group effort. I remember we were in a
Yep.
group chat and we were
I
talking
remember
through it.
this instance.
Yeah, we were all talking through
We all organized around trying to do that.
yeah, instead of just like I'm gonna post this. So, and by the way, this artist did retract it too. He realized immediately. He's like, "Holy shit, you're right," And so he immediately took it down, and he then began encouraging all the people that shared it like to take theirs down. And everyone was like, "Wait a minute. Oh yeah, this is probably not. This is not the way to go about this specific problem."
and not productive.
Yeah, and this artist, by the way, he's not from the U.S., so he didn't think anything of it. He was just like, whatever. And then I talked to him, and he's like, oh yeah, you guys do have like a epidemic there. This isn't like a light issue. And so he's like, all right, my bad. And so, but like that's my point. Like I think there's alternative ways to solve these types of problems, but I also understand how in the other instances where this kind of gets overblown, where people start to mob against someone. There have been occasions where I think it makes sense, but if I had my choice, I'd say we should avoid it altogether, even in the instances where it makes sense, right? It should definitely be more of a proactive kind of on the ground approach, not satellite tweeting and posting, because it's too effective. And what I mean by this is that it's too effective even to the point where the people who aren't necessarily that terrible or haven't done terrible things are getting ousted in the worst possible ways, you know? And so...
yeah, and then so last on that, and then let's start with the questions.
Yeah,
is that I wanted to partially retract what I'd said. Instead of thinking that we should use cancel culture on actually toxic people, maybe we should just avoid the cancel culture in general. So that my instinct wasn't to say that it's all bad. It was to say let's use it on certain individuals. So that's probably not positive.
Yeah, I think it's
positive mentality.
Yeah, I think we just need better people that represent the people, and then we need better policies. I
just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, totally. And we need better policies. We need better. We need to trust the people of authority. Right now, that's not happening, and that's why I think people feel they have to go through mob mentality. But speaking of experience, man, or speaking from experience, it's just not as effective in the ways you would want it to be, and it's only useful to you if it's on your side, right? And justice should be blind to that, you know. And so then when you are on the opposite side of that, we
have laws in a court system.
Yeah, it's kind of too late, right? If you've already built the standard around like we should go around getting people this way, you know, and then it happens to you, and you're just like, you know,
whoops.
Yeah, and there's plenty of examples of this already, where people who have like championed cancel culture then themselves become canceled for some other alternative reason. It's just all.
Wait, I thought this wasn't on the table. You know, like
oh wait, you can cancel me too.
Then we can cancel this thing.
Yeah, you can
like
yeah,
crap,
of course.
Me. Yeah. So I see what you're getting at, the bigger picture. And then the last thing
is the story of Frankenstein, right? Like where everyone thinks Frankenstein's a monster, and all the mob come. It's a huge misunderstanding. I mean, he technically is a monster, but he's a kind monster.
He's a gentleman. He just wants hugs. And he wants to attend community college. And then the last thing is that you had mentioned that you take more offense to a close friend, or sorry, you take more offense to a stranger calling you an idiot versus close friend calling you a racial slur. Yeah. So I'm the opposite of that. I would take more offense to a close person than I would a stranger. When like I go on a video game and I get called the N-word the entire time we're playing the game, and just hateful things, and I'm just like, all right, whatever, dude. like the fact of if I want to play this video game, if I leave the voice chat on, I'm probably gonna hear that.
Yeah.
And so I don't let that get to me at all. But if somebody close to me like says some hurtful things, I think I'll be more hurt.
No, you misunderstood. I'm saying if they are saying it out of fun, then I don't get offended. Just the word itself doesn't matter. It's the context.
Okay.
So if I was walking down the street and somebody called me an idiot, it's like, you effing idiot or whatever, for something that I may have done, whether it was my fault or not, that affects me more than if a close friend is just happening to say it because we're in jest. We're just hanging out, you know?
Okay, now I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, because I like that same scenario you just explained. I agree. Like just people online, I almost discount everything they may say, especially if it's really distasteful. I'm talking about like specific instances, like if I'm at a bar or something, because that has happened, you know, where people have said something to me in the past, and I would get pretty upset about it, you know. But it wasn't like, it's like the whole argument of like whenever people get mad at you, and they'll passively aggressively argue with you, and then you just raise your voice just a little bit and they're like, hey man, I'm not yelling. But it's like all the things you were saying though were pretty clearly aggressive. You
I'm
know what I
laughing
mean?
way too hard at your voice.
Yeah.
I've never
And
heard
as
you
soon as
make
you
a
raise your
like
voice,
that.
you're not rational anymore, right? That's my
Hey
point. Like
man,
that, yeah.
hey man.
And you know what I'm talking about, right? I'm sure
Yeah, I
everybody
know,
here
I know.
knows a person like
Yeah.
that. Like they'll say something to you. Like let's say they said to you, Mike. They're like, you know, Mike, I
Uh,
really don't like your hair, man. Like I think your hair is really bad. It's like super nappy and it's just like out of
we're
order.
throwing hands. We're
And you're
throwing
like,
hands.
what'd you say, dude? Hey, man, why are you raising your voice, dude? I'm just trying to tell you something. Like it's like what that person said was
What the heck, dude?
incredibly offensive and mean. You know, it's like that's why I'm saying like it depends on what
Yeah,
that person
okay.
is saying. They don't even have to cuss. They don't have to raise their voice. It's the context of the conversation, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And I think that's that's what matters to me, not just like I think Dan Carlin makes a whole point about this in one of his specials, which is a great point about like they're just words. It's just the context, and then he does this whole bit about how one person is calmly insulting you,
yeah.
but because they didn't raise their voice and they didn't curse, then it must be civil. It's like no, man. Like it's all contextually based. So that's
Okay.
hopefully that clears up everything.
Yeah, it clears up totally because the first explanation was way different than this
Yeah.
clarification.
Hopefully everybody else
Um,
understands that's what I meant too.
yeah. Okay, so let's rapid fire these questions. We got a lot of them,
No,
and we
we
don't
got
have
some
too
time.
much more
Let's
time.
do it. Let's do it.
How much time you want
Let's
to
go to
go?
one. We can go to one.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Adriano asks, "Hello, I have a question. In one of your streams, you talked about giving feedback to people, like a feedback video. Are you already doing that, and what are your plans for it?"
Great question. So no, we're not doing that as of now. We are going to do it though. The strategy is to be consistent. So far we're 2 for 2 on the stream, right? And once we get comfortable with this, then I'm gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna start setting up the next thingy and how that's gonna look and how comfortable I'll feel about it. You know, so it's just a matter of systematically putting something in place.
We're building a habit,
Yeah,
essentially.
building a habit, and then but we will do it, and I want to do it. I think it'd be a great thing. Now, how we're gonna go about doing it? Again, I don't really know exactly the deets, but I will say that we do want to kind of want to have like a place where people can submit stuff, and then I can just grab it. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that'd be ideal.
yes, we are planning to do so.
Yeah,
I
and
realize
then
I'm
you
drawing
guys,
like a buff arm on both of the streams. I need to switch it up next stream. Need to
you
get
draw
away from
some
the
like
buff arm.
skinny guys.
Yeah, I'm just projecting. These are just what I want to look like. I want to look like a beast,
With like,
figuratively and literally.
you want a hunchback.
Yeah, I want a
Just,
hunchback,
you
wires,
want
and
like
long hair coming out of everywhere. Yeah,
antennas coming out of your face.
yeah.
Um, by the way, folks, we should be having a schedule. It's not set in stone, but the idea is that we have content at 11:30 a.m. on from Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you might have noticed if you're a subscriber, you'll see in your subscription feed
Way to drop
there's
the
some
ball on that,
premieres.
dude.
I know, right?
Where's that
Dang,
rough
I
brain?
lied. My brain,
Yeah, where's that
my
rough brain coming
my
at?
rough brain. Oh my God, my are you tampering with my water? No. What was I saying? So 11:30 a.m. You guys will notice that there's premieres. So the way YouTube premieres works is that you guys can all watch the video live and talk with each other, but we won't be there for the live showing of the content. So questions won't be answered, but it's a video going live. So go ahead and check those out. We'll see how that goes. And if you guys think the premiere is too obnoxious, we can stop doing it because we it's new feature.
I know I saw
Anyways,
a lot of comments on the last one that was posted. People seem pretty
oh
happy
yeah,
about it. Yeah,
okay, cool.
but
So
yeah,
yeah, expect something Wednesday and Friday. And then so next question, Gonzalo says, I know this is cliche, but how did you learn to draw? Any particular book or class?
super cliche. Um, yeah, there's no specific book or class. Um, it was a series of books bookses, bookses, the golem.
See, now your brain.
Yeah, no, there's a series of books and classes. I will say that the way that I learned to draw um, is the way that I teach how to draw, which is consistency. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of this whole stream, I mentioned that um, the point that people should really focus on is not whether they're practicing well or not, it's whether they're practicing at all. It's a more important point to be pivoting from. But with that being said, some of my favorite books is Framed Ink. Any book with Leindecker's art in it, and I forget the name of this design book, but there's like a design that's like Make It on the Grid. This book is really cool because it talks about designing on a grid. I don't design on a grid, but I just like the idea that people think about this stuff. It's really interesting to me. And then another like great course or educator, I mentioned Marshall Vandruff earlier. He was one of the earlier inspirations in my life. Charlie Wen, Ryan Meinerding from Marvel. These people were huge influencers, but there's lots of them. There's lots of people that are like this, tons. Some of them are actually now my close friends, which is really bizarre, but it's super cool. Which is true for a lot of my students too. They feel the same way, I'm sure, about me. But it's just the nature of it. It's like, you know, student-teacher relationship should become a friendship. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I wouldn't, like I said, I don't think there's, it'll be disingenuous to just see like, oh yeah, it's this one thing. Like I mentioned earlier, I made tons of mistakes even in my own learning. I didn't know what was the best strategies to get better. You know, like I was trying to figure it out too.
All right. So now Hassan asks, I'm a fine artist. I
Cool, man.
want to be a concept artist for character design. I've hard time doing digital painting. Give me some tips slash guidance to focus during practice.
Sure. So, for those who are our traditional painter chaps, um, yeah, the problem that you have is what I like to call the artistic bias. So you're pretty good at painting traditionally, and because of that incredible skill you may have, or at least the illusion of incredible skill, I have no idea how well you can paint or how badly you can paint. But whether it's an illusion or not, that gets in the way of just recognizing it's just a new tool. Like, I can put this in terms of traditional painting that you would understand too. Like, if you're really good at oil paintings, doesn't mean that you're also really good at watercolor. And if you're good at watercolor, it doesn't mean that you're also good at oil painting. If you're good at pencils, it doesn't mean you're good at inks. If you're good at inks, it doesn't mean you're good at pencils, right? And so what ends up happening is it's just a tool, right? So you just need to learn how to manage and manipulate the tool. And once you've learned that, then the skills that you should have acquired, if you have any, like I said, should be able to transcend. And if they don't, then there might be a hard reality that you might not actually be as good as you might think. And that's fine too, right? It's actually better to find out sooner than later, right? But you kind of, I would say, be very reluctant to start pointing fingers at like the digital tool as there's something wrong with it or there's something that just isn't intuitive. It's a new tool, right? You just need to spend time with it and adapt to it. And I have taught many artists who've come from traditional backgrounds, and this is exact advice I give to them. And many of them are like, all right, well, all right, try it. And I literally force them to paint more and more often in these digital tools. And then surely, shortly but surely, they realize immediately how naive they were. Like, oh, of course, it's like another tool. Like, why didn't I take that seriously? And again, it's that artistic bias. You have this premise in your mind that you're already capable, you're already competent. And with that in your mind, the forefront of your mind, it can distract you. It can misguide you. So, hope that helps.
All right, cool.
Super cool.
Swoodox asks,
Sudax.
When learning fundamentals, should
Sue
one
Sue
focus on more
Ducks.
than
Sorry, got
SWODOX?
it.
SWO docs.
Sue
Or
Ducks.
smiley face. Starts with a smiley face. When learning fundamentals, should one focus on more than one topic at a time, or is it okay to learn more than once?
So
I have 5 hours for drawing every day.
yeah, I call for you to practice the most immediate problems. So if you feel like you have a form issue, then just focus all your time and attention on the form. Don't worry about lighting. Don't worry about perspective. Don't worry about anatomy. Just focus on form. And then once you start focusing on form, you should say to yourself, okay, um, form was really hard because my perspective seemed to be in the way a lot. And so then you practice perspective for a while until you start to understand it. But basically, you practice based off of what you need to learn. Because if you kind of divide your time amongst multiple different disciplines, um, again, there's no such thing as bad practice, but it's not as effective, right? As just focus, just saying super focus on one thing and really have a foothold on that one thing. You're really acquiring some sensibilities on that one thing. That is super valuable skill. And then when you do that, then you move on to the next thing, and you put a lot of time into that. And our brains work that way too. You know, our brains function based off of that premise. They don't like to take on multiple pieces of information, let alone retaining multiple pieces of information. They don't. It just doesn't work that way. And so if you are focused on form for like a whole week or even a month, you're gonna get better at form. It's gonna stick, right? But if you like sprinkle form in here and there, along with a bunch of other stuff, some of that stuff will stay, some of it won't. And so that's usually my advice for
Cool. Pixel Mosh Pit
that.
asks,
That's dope.
yeah, I like that name. AJ,
Pixel
when are you
Mosh
coming to
Pit.
Florida for a workshop?
That's so fucking cool, man. I like that name. Pixel Mosh Pit.
Yeah, way better than Robot Pencil.
It is actually. I'd fight that. I'd say you're
If
right. I'm not even I'm not even disputing. Pixel Mosh Pit, dude. That's so good.
it's a pretty good name.
Yeah, because think about it. It's like you just have a mosh pit of pixels. It's just like a really interesting way of naming a painting.
Yeah.
It's cool, man. I like it a lot. Yeah, email us. Mike will
Yeah,
supply the email,
yeah.
and then we'll set it up. We actually are doing a thing called Robotpencil to Go. We did it with the New York branch, I guess, with my buddy Modern Day James and Steven Sabata. We're almost nearly sold out. We got 2 sponsors, and the event has been totally paid for by the fans and the sponsors in like the first 2 days. And so this might be a real thing where we can bring artists to you. You know, it's not as crazy as you might think. The tickets, we were selling them for $50 a pop, and some people could save up and afford that easily. You know, if you're playing Call of Duty, you can easily go to this one workshop, right? If you can buy more than 2 or 3 loot boxes, you can go to this workshop. You know, if you can buy 10 coffees.
All right. Stop
you,
attacking my character.
you can you can go to this workshop, or you can afford us to come to these workshops. You know,
Yeah.
and so by all means, man, we can sort it out. Yeah, it's just a
Yeah,
matter of
give us an
bringing the
email.
community together. And so the things that we need help with on your end would be place to stay, venue, these types of like groundwork, because we can't do that. Like I don't know anything about Florida, right? I don't know what's near there, where's a good place to do a workshop.
Florida man.
But
Gators.
yeah, but if you do, then that's the first step of making it happen. You might be surprised. I helped my students in Spain, help them get a workshop type event. Now it's been going year round for like 4 years. I helped my other students up in Toronto with theirs, and theirs also about 4 years. And then I reached out to Modern Day James and said, hey, let's do a New York thing. And then he was just like, he's like, holy snaps, like you're right, we could totally do it. And then we did it, and he was just like, whoa, this is much easier than I expected. And I was like, no, it's definitely not as hard as you think. And this goes true for everybody else. And by the way, if you guys are local to New York, we'll send a. Well, here, let me find the link to that, and I'll put it in the chat for you to put it in the chat for them.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. All right, it's in the chat for you, so you just got to pass that in the messenger. So if you're local to New York, it's happening. The venue has already been afforded. My flight and hotel have been covered, and we have the venue for roughly what is it now? We've changed the time, so 11 to 7. So that's about an 8-hour workshop with a lunch in between, socializing at the end where we all get to hang out, Q&A panel, including our experiences at the Paint One battles in Japan. Me and Steve are going to talk about that. It's going to be cool. As long as it's just like a workshop, we're going to be doing demos and explaining stuff to y'all. It's going to be fun.
Okay. Sammy Arts asks, are you going to add new videos on the Robotpencil site?
I am actually. Yeah, pretty soon. I just posted recently on my Facebook that I'm going to start to rebrand a little bit my mentorships, as well as start like a one-on-one type session, like a personal trainer, like personal art trainer program. Trying to get legs on that, see how popular it might be. It looks like it might be pretty popular. It's now a matter of, would it be affordable? Someone came up with a great suggestion of like incremental time segments, whether it's like between 10 to 15 minutes to a half an hour to an hour, versus just a rigid 1 hour time slot. Because some people might only be able to afford 10 minutes of like a review, versus
it also might be all they need.
And it might be all they need. Yeah, exactly. And so what's great about this is that it might be a great way for me to hang out and have it afford my time, you know? And so I know a lot of people would love for this type of stuff. I got this idea because someone actually literally just said, I'll pay you whatever. Like, please teach me. And I said, hey, you know, I never considered this. And, you know, I work out a lot, and I remember having a personal trainer, and that was really great. I take salsa dance lessons, and having somebody teach me to do that, like, I paid someone to do that, you know? And it's a very intimate experience, and it's very costly, but, you know, I know some people can afford it. I still will have my cheaper tutorials. I will still have my mentorship that's ultimately cheaper for a longer experience, but it will still always be divided amongst several other people, which, you know, still has value. People still enjoy it, but it's obviously never going to be as good as having just like, I'm only focused on you for like a whole hour or more or less, right? So we're ironing that all out, and so whenever I start doing videos that are for the website, I'm going to start adding them. Yeah, if you have a lifetime to that, like, you will always get them. I'm always going to be posting them there once I do them.
Okay.
For lifetime. For life.
Lisa Schmidt asks, is it too late with 30 to work in the art industry without study? There are so many talented young artists.
Nope, it's not too late. And you should listen to my last stream. I think I even talked a lot about what you just said. So to try to save some time, I will say in the Cliff Notes versions of what I said was that whatever you say is an obstacle most likely is true. But the difference between those who do well and succeed is generally that they will reframe the philosophy of what that means. Right, so you see that there's a lot of competition. I might see it as there's a lot of artists to be inspired by, or I have a clear understanding of the standards that are expected of me and what I need to achieve. You know, and no, absolutely not. It's not too late. Get on it.
Okay, Crown Mountain asks, how do I get into the habit of drawing every day?
Yeah, you just start small. So, for instance, I'm vegan. And when I switched to veganism, it was pretty challenging. Not the first week. Like, I removed all meat pretty effectively after the first week. I realized I didn't really need it. And then what was hard was like the dairy, because dairy is like in everything. It's crazy how much it's in. And so for me, it was like a slow burn, right? But even when I got rid of all the meat, like the way that I did it was, I would just, if I can avoid it, I would avoid it. And I was able to avoid it quite often, pretty effortlessly. And so that's what made me change my thinking of like, I could probably just go full tilt. And I did. But then when it was dairy, that took much longer. But it was the same philosophy as like, if I can avoid it, I'll avoid it. If I can't, I'll work on it. And then I saw like veganism as a thing. Like I didn't know it was veganism. I just read reports about eating less meat. And I was like, I should probably just go full vegan. Like I don't see why I can't and why I shouldn't. There's a lot of really good reasons why you should, And so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. And then that's where the challenge of dairy removal became a real problem. And so what I was doing was just avoid it if I could, but then also trying to find substitutes, find things that I could, replace that are my favorite meals and favorite things to eat. But slowly but surely. I didn't get hard on myself if I didn't read all of the labeling correctly. I didn't get upset at myself if I had a little bit of cheese here and there when I first started. And in fact, I still don't really get that really crazy. Like if I find out something might have had dairy in it after the fact, or if someone accidentally put in something that I didn't expect, I still don't get really hard on myself. I think that's kind of the problem, is that if you miss a day of like drawing, for instance, you might overcorrect by thinking like, I shouldn't, like, now it's all tainted. Like this whole perfect record type of approach is unsustainable. In fact, Mike, you were a great example of this, because you were falling behind at some of your work at some point, and then you were like, even though I've kind of fallen behind, like you were rationalizing like you shouldn't do more, but then you realized, but I think AJ would still want me to do something even if I'm falling behind, and you were right, and then you ended up doing something, you got back on it, right? So like when you get really hard on yourself,
well, I learned that mentality from you.
Yeah, like when you're really hard on yourself, it can have the opposite effect. So don't be so hard on yourself, right? Like just if you miss a day, you miss a day. Just get back on it, or whatever you tried to do, it clearly didn't work as effective as you think. So just try something else, right? Like let's say you set up a timer in the morning, but you don't wake up in the mornings. Okay, then maybe do something at night. Okay, hey, the night thing is working out, but you're not doing it for an hour, or you're being real distracted for like half an hour. You're always on your phone or whatever the hell. So you're like, okay, so then I'm gonna, just turn off my phone, see how that works, and then maybe you find that it works perfectly, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you still need to check your stuff. So you say, okay, well, I need to wake up, or maybe I need to like have it half an hour earlier, where I just completely just get that out of the way, or maybe every 20 minutes I reward myself with like Facebook time or whatever the heck you really enjoy or indulge in. Like instead of just straight up being super guilty that you failed, right? Just constantly adjust and readjust what you think you've done wrong, and what you can do better. Yeah, like again, like the kind of the original premise of what I started with, this whole idea of doing it right. I don't think that's a wise strategy, because people make mistakes all the time.
Okay. Kylo00 asks, do you know Wallop
No.
or Wallop? Wallop.
Well, maybe.
Okay.
I might. I just
WLOP.
I don't know. I like I said, I might actually. I just don't. When you said it, nothing came to mind.
Okay. I'm gonna ask this next one, and I'll show you their work in a sec. I'll post it too. Eric asks, what would you suggest for dealing with too many ideas that never perfect version syndrome? I very often find myself pumped for the piece, not realizing it doesn't work very well in the end.
Yeah, so this is the problem that people have whenever they don't finish stuff. It means your sketch. It just means that you may have never had a good idea from the start, right? And it sounds pretty harsh to say that, but it's just kind of potentially the reality, right? Because if you have a hard time taking something to a higher level or pursuing that thing, maybe it's not as fleshed out as you thought it was, right? So you need different intuition. And what I mean by different intuition, like you need to realize that this intuition you have now of like starting a painting and then never really taking it further, right? Having all these ideas, like you're saying, but then never having any of them come together. Whatever is driving that pattern of behavior is clearly not effective. So you need to just change your pattern of behavior. So instead of saying, I got all these ideas, why don't you just say, maybe I don't have the ideas. Maybe I need to do a series of exploration and really understand my idea in and out and actually see it from different perspectives. Maybe I should take my drawings a little bit further and let me paint them a little bit better. Let me try a little bit harder, you know? Even though I feel real uncomfortable. Because when I was staying in my comfort zone, nothing was getting done. And so I like to call that changing your intuition, right? This is a great example of this, like with diet. Like if you are intuitively eating, like you're just following what your stomach is telling you to eat, it could tell you to keep eating burgers, right? And keep eating like really fatty foods because they're very delicious. And your body is like intuitively telling you, yeah, let's keep on eating that stuff because it's dope. But in reality, you know, on paper, it just isn't, you know? But intuitively, right, like you're following that. Like my children, whenever people see my kids eat like their vegetables and stuff, they're just like, how do you get your kids to eat so good? It's because, you know, we've trained their intuition to not fall for like eating just chicken nuggets all the time or eating like chips. They love that stuff. They love candy, you know? And why shouldn't they? It's delicious, you know? But if it was up to them, that's all they would be eating, you know? And obviously it shouldn't be up to them. They don't know what they're doing. They have no clue what lies ahead of them, you know? In terms of health issues in the future. That's what parents are for. So help give insight, you know? Give foresight. Train foresight into your children. And I feel the same is true for us artists. Like, what's your artistic diet consist of? And is it good? Or are you just ingesting bad behaviors and bad patterns? And if you aren't, then it's time to kind of start changing that. And again, I don't know too much about what the situation is, but my Cliff Notes advice for this would be, you need to just finish more artwork, and it's gonna suck. You're probably not gonna do a good job, but that's kind of the point of getting better, right? How are you going to improve if you're not constantly putting yourself in a constant state of stress? Not too much stress, just enough, right? Using weight training again. If I'm lifting 50 pounds, or let's say I'm curling 25 pounds and I can do 10 of that easily, then I need to increase the weight, right? So then I do like 30 pounds and then I can do barely curl like 8. You know, like 8 is pretty hard. Then maybe I should go for that 9. You know what I mean? Just like try to see if I can get that 9th rep in. And if I can, try to get that 10th one in there too, you know? And then once 10 becomes easy with the 30 pounds, then I move up to 35 pounds and just rinse and repeat, right? Until you get to a place where you feel comfortable with your strength. And in this regard, as an artist, your strength as an artist, like where you feel comfortable, like where you're happy with your skills. Because honestly, you can keep on lifting, you know what I mean?
All right. JR Register asks,
Hey, it's JR.
What is a typical workday in the life of Anthony Jones from eyes open to eyes shut?
Yeah, JR, what's up, dude? We were at a sketch group this last week.
Oh, nice.
And he was like, I wanted to ask you this question. I was like, ask it. So I'm glad you did, because I totally forgot, JR. My typical day, I wake up around 6:30 to 7 in the morning. Not by choice. My children are awake and they're screaming and telling me to wake up. And then I kind of lay down in bed for like another 30-40 minutes. It depends on whether my wife is feeling up to it. But usually she tries to help out. She knows that I'm super tired, and you'll see why in just a second. But she'll take care of the kids for a bit, and then I take my kids to school, specifically my daughter. Take her to school, which is right around 8 o'clock. And then I go and get breakfast for myself, usually some sort of bowl of fruits that are mashed together in some sort of great assortment of vitamins and seeds and protein and all the things that I would need in a day to survive. I pretty much get all in the morning. And then get coffee for me and my wife if she wants any, or if I feel like I need coffee, depends. And then from there, I get to my house around like 9 o'clock ish, and then I either eat my breakfast and just be in meetings and calls, talk to people, organize stuff, set stuff up, do freelance if I have freelance. So my work day is pretty fluctuated depending on what I got going on. So usually from 9 to 1, I'm pretty much doing stuff. And so depending on the day, I'm doing something different. For instance, Wednesdays and Fridays I'm teaching, and so then that's kind of what I'm doing then. But ultimately, that's like my work day. And then from 1 till like 2:30, or basically 1 to 2, I just kind of hang out with my wife or my baby, or I'll catch up on work if I feel like there's time. Depends what's going on. Or just check my phone, see what's going on socials, interact with people. This is a fun fact. Specifically on my Instagram, I pretty much message everybody. And if you message me on Instagram before, you know that this is true. So I usually use that time to kind of like talk to people, see what's going on. And then it doesn't necessarily mean I answer all sorts of questions, but I definitely talk to people, engage, and give them shout outs whenever it's
You're more likely to get a direct interaction.
Yeah, but I give a direct interaction. I recognize you said something. And I know that's very powerful for a lot of people, but that's my brand, right? I'm one of the peoples. And so then I go get my kids, then hang out for a little bit, then go to the gym, and then this is where my work day usually begins, right after the gym, between 6 till whenever. I just do work, whether it's freelance, whether it's checking emails, whether it's just setting up the future of Robotpencils. And that can go easily between 6 to 10, or 6, for instance, last night I was 6 to like 1 in the morning. But sometimes it's less work. This month and last have been less work, or like at least the end of the last month. And so that's why I decided to do more streams and begin teaching more classes and begin expanding Robotpencil. Since it's a slow freelance month, I'm like, I could probably switch it up and reinvigorate my sense of being an educator. And it's my preferred thing, you know. It's just if you just do it for too long, for too many hours, like because that's what was happening. I was teaching for so long, for so many minutes in a day, that you get a little burned out. And so having freelance is helpful because it keeps me on my toes. It gives me this proper stress that I just don't get experience with as an educator, because usually I'm the one that's putting the stress on to other people, you know. So it's a good thing to keep working from time to time. Yeah, and then on Thursdays I go to sketch group, and sometimes Wednesdays I do life drawing. Depends if I have freelance or not. But that's more or less my days. And then my weekends I try to spend hanging out with the fams. I hang out with the fam even during the weekdays because I work from home, so it's not like too crazy like my work schedule, because those times I mentioned before where I would like interact people socially, that's also include like my own family, my wife and my kids.
All right. Kane asks, what is your opinion on the state of the industry regarding pay overall? Would you say that it's on the high end or more like mid-level job, assuming you live in Cali?
It depends on where you live though. Because if you live in Cali, it's just, even if you get paid 6 figures, it's still not a lot of money depending on where you live, right? Like if I were to move to a third world country, I would potentially be like a millionaire, right? Like I'd have like a mansion and all this crazy nonsense. You know what I mean? But like, I don't. So it's like, we don't have like a big place, but we live in a really great neighborhood and all this good stuff that matters to me. But the pay in the industry is actually pretty good. You just gotta fight for it. And I think it's reasonable that some people start lower based off of their lack of experience. It's just how it is everywhere else. But even like base pay for some studios can go from $45,000 to $70,000 to $80,000 a year, and that's like entry level junior artists. It just depends on where you're working, and for most people that's a lot, because like even like people who go to 4 years colleges for like degrees that they think matter, $30,000 is lucky for them. So you, as an artist, you make already 15 grand more potentially as a starter on a base level, and then that's for like a smaller company. If you're working for like a massive one, like I said, you can get start off easily at $70,000 or $80,000.
Okay, Stephen Gillis, or Gillis, sorry, Stephen Gillis asks, you really don't use a lot of layers. Is that something you work towards, or is that just the way you've always approached your work in Photoshop?
Yeah, I think I only use 2 layers. Yeah, pretty much what I work towards. Yeah, nothing crazy.
Okay.
Easy.
David Fisher asks, hey Anthony, I want to be a character designer and I'm currently studying gesture to get a grasp on the fundamentals.
Great.
What area would you recommend I study next as it applies to character design?
Anatomy. It's all within the same wheelhouse. Anatomy and character design.
All right, cool. Lisa Schmidt asked,
I'd say let's start moving faster too. I just kind of thought about it. I was like, yeah, I can't answer that quickly, but I think I should. Yeah. So we can get all these questions out of the way.
Well, yeah, there's even more that I haven't posted that I haven't written down yet.
Okay.
But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
just
6,
go ahead
7, 8, 9, 10.
We'll just go through them. Holy smokes! Dang.
We have a lot of questions, dude.
You guys want to ask questions, man? Appreciate it.
Lisa Schmidt asked, "Do you never use Blender tool?"
I was using it every once in a while, but I don't necessarily need it. But it is a great tool, yeah. I use it more on the iPad than I use it on Photoshop, and I think it's because
Blender?
I think she's talking about the Blender brush, right?
Oh, I have no idea. I was thinking Blender, the program.
No, I'm thinking
probably
contextually.
Blender brush.
Yeah, I think contextually she's talking about the brush. But I'll answer that question just in case she did mean like the software.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I do. I use it. I just use it more often on. I'm just gonna stop painting here. Actually, I think this is a good place to stop. It's freaking wicked Wolverine, dude. So, oops. Yeah, I've been painting in Photoshop for so long, for so often. I just don't use. Like, I don't need to use it, but it is super helpful and it definitely expedites the painting blending process for sure. So to say that you shouldn't use it because I don't use it, it's kind of silly. It's more of like I've just built such habits that I kind of just don't use it that often that it's just built into me. But I think it is a great thing. And in Blender, the 3D software, I use it. Depending on the task, if I need to do more 3D stuff, I might use that. Specifically animation and such, because I use it mostly as an animation tool. But it is a really powerful 3D modeling application.
Yeah, they got a big update coming Wednesday.
And I do know the WOAP guy or gal.
Yeah. Okay. Thought you might
I follow this person. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Benjamin Roseman asks, where did you study anatomy?
I went to Art Institute, and it was a really crap school, but it had a really amazing life instructor, Charles Hugh. And so I just sat in his class all the time, whether I was officially supposed to be there or unofficially.
Okay.
And then just tons of anatomy books.
Big Boy Soul asks, what should I do to solve a problem with followers to activity ratio? I have many followers, but many of them aren't active, and I think it hurts my profile.
Yeah. So there was a time where I used to like pay for likes and stuff. I think it was back in the day where Facebook. And as an experiment, I think I spent upwards of like $500, $600 to do this, just to see how it was. And I stopped doing it specifically for this problem that you just mentioned. So depending on how you got those followers is what I would question. Because when I got all these extra like likes and stuff, I was like, oh great, like my numbers were higher and I felt really happy. But then the engagement was very low. But then I had other websites, like for instance like ArtStation, where I would post something, and even though I had like a fraction of the followers on ArtStation than I did on Facebook, specifically my page, I would get like a huge reaction to my ArtStation posts. You know, to give you, just keep it like as a plain number thing. Like if I had like 100 comments or likes collectively on a Facebook post, on ArtStation I would have 300, right? In terms of comments and like, let's say, and let's say I had 30,000 on Facebook, but then I had 15,000, so it's like almost triple the interactivity, you know, with like half of the viewers, or like less than that, right? And so, or the subscribers. So then when I saw that, I stopped doing it, because then I realized it's better to have a lower number, but knowing that everybody that subscribed deliberately wanted to follow you. You know, they were there because they like what you have to say and like what you have to do. And so my Instagram is like that. My Instagram is pretty heavy now. It's getting close to 126,000. But there is I think maybe I have paid for one promotion on there a long time ago, and it was during that same time when I was doing the Facebook experiment. But generally speaking, my interaction there is pretty genuine, and I stopped doing it because I realized it's just much better. And going back to questioning why you even have a large audience, whether you may have purchased or not, who knows? But whatever you built your audience around is why they're there. So if you built your audience around, let's say, I'm just throwing this out there, let's say just doing goofy videos about art, I don't know, right? Then when you start to say, oh, well, let me start to do tutorials and this and that, that's not the brand that you built this audience. So they're not going to engage with that, because if you think about like the kind of person that shows up for that earlier stuff, they might not even give a damn about all the other things. And that sometimes can throw people off, because they look at the numbers and they think that every person thinks the same, but they just don't, you know? Like when I have 1 million followers on whatever platform I will eventually get to 1 million, they're going to be there because of my art and my education, right? Because that is all I put out there. And so when I say, hey, I'm going to sell more of my art, or I'm going to do more of my education, those people are already kind of there for that. So they're going to engage, you know? And so you should keep that in mind. And if that's not the case, like if you felt like you've built towards this, then you just got to like keep building larger and larger engagement. 10,000 likes doesn't mean 10,000 interactions. It's usually a fraction of that. A small fraction.
Okay. Sino, I can't pronounce that. Somebody asked a question about lighting. When you have a POC like this one with both warm and cold shadows on the body, how do you decide where each should go? Just creative intuition to see what works?
Yeah, I always focus on contrast and values. So if we look, the values are solid, so that the colors work fine. And I'll prove it to you. So we're going to do this. Throw this up here. I'm going to do 2. So this bad boy I'm going to put onto color mode, and you'll notice that there is no difference, because there isn't. Because when you put something on color mode, it will just replace the pixels underneath with these new colors, but these were the original colors, so nothing's changed. But if I decide, you know what, I don't like Wolverine's original colors anymore, I'm going to make Wolverine pink and green, you'll notice that this still feels pretty good, right? And because the values are pretty solid, you can kind of do this continuously. You can keep changing it up. And there's going to be some colors that are just not going to work out, because it's just, they don't complement each other. But this one right here, like this red and this kind of like blue, this is pretty tight. And
All right.
so focusing on values rather than, oh, should I put a warm or cool color there? You should only really care about that if you're trying to be really accurate, or you're trying to push invoke some sort of emotion. But if you don't really care much about either of those things, you just want to paint like a really nice painting, then contrast. So if you have a lot of warm colors, then you want to put some cool colors in there eventually. If you have a lot of cool colors, you want to put some warm colors in there eventually. If you have a lot of texture, you want to put some smooth areas. If you have a lot of complicated forms, you want to put some simple forms. So it's a constant balance of contrast and unity.
All right. Oliver asks, "Hey Anthony, I'm trying to get better at fundamentals. What tutorials of yours would you recommend to get started?"
The Painting with Confidence is a pretty good one, and then the Design series and Nanimate one is pretty good, I think. I'm gonna do better intro level painting tutorials because I feel like I am better at teaching people at a lot lower level now after years of teaching people. When I first started doing those tutorials like 4 or 5 years ago, I was a different educator. I think I could do a better job now. So I'm gonna
I like your approachable anatomy still. I think
yeah,
those
I
were
think
your best.
I can do a better job.
We'll do it then.
But those ones are the ones that I would suggest, and what Mike just suggested. It's
Okay,
time to
Razov.
go. One more.
Okay, Razov asks, if and when the feedback streams will come to fruition. Will you be reviewing any type of artwork or just going to focus on character stuff?
No, all of it. Whatever. I'm pretty good as long
Yeah.
as it's concept art. Concept art and illustration, I should be able to do fine. It doesn't matter about the style. It doesn't matter about the quality. It's just I can give you the critique that I think you'll need to hear. Okay. And this, I'm saying like even if you're like an animator or a cartoonist, like I have some feedback that I can give. I can probably not give you too much insight about how to dive into those industries, but I can give you what I know my friends in those industries would probably have to say, and then probably direct you to them. But if it's specifically in my wheelhouse, I can obviously give you much better insight and advice. But even if it isn't, I know lots of great artists, and I talk to them all the time. I've had deep and meaningful conversations with these people whenever I visit them or whenever we have workshops. I listen to what they have to say. So I have a lot of knowledge just as of right from hanging out with great artists all the time and interacting with them all the time. And so I will share that knowledge with you indirectly. I'll be the middleman of information if we're not in the same industry. As long as it's artistic. If it's not artistic, then it's going to be harder. If you like show me pictures of your children, you're like how do you parent children? All right, well, I'm not a psychiatrist or
I don't know what this
child
picture is going to help
therapist.
me with, but
Yeah.
I can talk.
Yeah, I could give some advice, I guess.
You want me to paint over your
It
daughter?
would be more of an opinion than like valid professional advice. You know what I mean? If it's something like that. But anyway, all right, I'm gonna roll out, guys. It's been a great stream. Thanks for showing up. You guys are all sweet and awesome. Thanks for asking such great questions and having great responses and keeping it pretty awesome, guys. We will have another stream on Monday of next week. I'll double check my calendar, make sure I don't have too many overlaps. But I've literally made this like a periodic thing on my calendar, so I've been working around it. So it should be
Good.
no problem. And so I'll see you guys on next Monday. Appreciate y'all. Have a great day, and cheers.